economic power, we also talked about the baby boom, right? And we said that there are educational opportunities where women are going to college more. You see an increase in college enrollment within all groups. And one of the reasons why is that people have more spare money to throw around. They also have not just more spare money to throw around, but they also have the opportunity through what's called the GI Bill. And did we mention that yesterday? Yeah. The GI Bill was, remember, a law that allows returning veterans to have money for college. It also helped them give them low interest loans to get buy houses as well. So they were like, hey, we want to help out our veterans who have been coming back from years of service overseas. Right? There's also some big changes in technology in the 1950s. Here is one of the big changes in technology. What do we have here? What is it, Toby? Where's the computer? Well, no, the whole room is a computer. A computer. All right. This entire room is like a giant computer that calculates various things here. And you see in the picture uh, these little, what are these little circular things on the wall? All right, they look like tape reel, right? Like almost like projector film. It was literally magnetic tape. A better, you're close with your comparison. Anybody ever seen a cassette tape, an old audio cassette tape, or a VHS tape? The magnetic tape that they had in there to store information on, that's how computers used to store information as well, on magnetic tape. So literally these reels have stored information on them. To give you a more modern day example, are you all old enough to remember what these are? Floppy disks. And you probably don't know this, but if you hold it up to the light here, you can see the little disc inside the circular disc. And if you pull this back, it's a magnetic disc. It stores information. This right here stores tons of information compared to those old reels. And this right here, by the way, is nothing. It's like 1.44 megabytes. That is, I mean, flash drives now have, you can get one cheap that has 16 gigs on it. All right. But you used to store these right here. What did they use the first computers to do? Not just that, but mathematical calculations. They found out these machines were good for doing complex math. And so one of the things you would do is they had these, like if you wanted to do a complex math problem, they had punch cards. And you had to, like, little perforated cards where you punch holes and stuff into it. To get the machine to read the card right, you had to punch out a certain sequence. So if you wanted the number five or like a multiplication sign or whatever else, you had to punch in these cards, feed them in one at a time. So complex problems would be like 100 cards, and you had to feed them into the machine one at a time. And stuff that would take humans like days and days and days to do, it could do much faster. By the way, there's a really famous company called International Business Machines. They got super popular at the time. IBM. Who knew, right? All right. These computers were the forerunner of what we use today. Although you're in your pocket, you've got more processing power than they could have ever dreamed of back then. Also, fun fact too, in the 1950s, they learned how to make computers communicate with each other. The internet, as we know it, is based off of technology in the 1950s. They were worried about nuclear war, and they're like, what happens if the phone lines, like, we can't talk to each other? And they're like, don't worry, we can make the computers talk to each other. Beep, boop, beep. Nah. All right. Other than just computer technology, anybody know any major changes in technology or innovations in technology that are significant in the 50s? What's one of them? We already had nuclear power to an extent. There is something that is relevant. What about medicine? Nope, penicillin had been around. I'll give you a hint. Something you can take from one person and put into another. First organ transplants. We transplanted the first kidney in the 1950s. All right, which still fascinates me that you can transplant an organ from one person to another. And like, hey, we're going to cut this organ out of you, put it into somebody else. We're going to tie off all the veins and arteries and everything, and it's going to work. To me, that's just bizarre. And it led to more medical discoveries. Like now we transplant kidneys, lungs, hearts, livers, bones. You know, they have a bone bank. That's fascinating. All right, so some small bones they can transplant in you. Okay, but the kidneys are the first organs that they transplant, and now it's like, that's way more common than it used to be. Oh, livers I think are the most fascinating because if you needed a liver transplant, they could just cut part of mine out and put it into you, and then mine would grow back and yours would grow into a whole liver. Isn't that neat? God, technology. Another major advance, they developed a vaccine for polio. Right? If you don't know, polio is a neurogenital type of disease, a nervous system disease that would sometimes affect people to the point where they would be paralyzed or they would die. And good old Dr. Jonas Salk comes up with a vaccine for it. Back then, they trusted vaccines a little more. They made kids at elementary schools. I remember my aunt telling me that when she was in grade school, they had the kids all go out to the playground and line up, and they would come through and just give them vaccines right there at school. Yeah. Polio, Franklin Roosevelt did. Yes. That's why he couldn't, like, he could stand on his own and he could do a little bit of walking if he had somebody kind of to assist him. But, they never wanted the public to see that. But yes, he did have polio. Most of his adult life, he couldn't walk. All right. Now, also in the 50s, when we get towards the more entertaining stuff, culture in America undergoes a lot of changes in the 1950s, and music is undoubtedly one of them. What's the biggest type of music that develops in the 50s that is brand new? No, we've had jazz since the 20s. What is it? Rock and roll in general, baby. Rock and roll. Rock and roll music is the new medium, the new format in the 1950s. How would you think about this though? Like if in your head you probably think of some rock songs, and you're like, that's definitely rock and roll. But how would you describe rock and roll to somebody if you couldn't play a song for them? What's the pacing like? Fast or slow? Definitely fast. Loud or soft? Definitely loud. Okay? Loud music. Oh, yeah. Fast paced. And then on top of that, what do we know about the sounds? Like, is it more acoustic or more electrical? Definitely electrical. They made use of like electric guitars, amplifiers, everything that you can think of. This is my kind of jam right here. Now, what is it? It's a pun, and it's a good one. Okay. Now, what else is interesting about rock and roll music is that people forget who really starts it. Who originates rock and roll? And you're like, I don't know. Wow, you would think Elvis. Elvis really kind of perfects it, but no. This guy is largely credited with coming up for the sound of rock and roll. Anybody know who this guy is? Chuck Berry is his name. Chuck Berry. Why did Chuck Berry probably not get a lot of press about coming up with this new sound? Toby? He's a black man. All right? And people didn't want to credit something that a lot of folks liked to a black individual, but Chuck Berry really originates the sounds for rock and roll. Now, you all are onto something here too. Chuck Berry really invents rock and roll, but who becomes the king of rock and roll? No, that's the king of pop, sir. You said it earlier. Elvis. Okay? Elvis Presley becomes the face of rock and roll music. Right? Now, one other thing unique about rock and roll, a way in which it distinguishes itself. We know what the sound is like, but what are the lyrics like? What is it? I mean, shouting is not necessarily not something new in music, but how would you describe the lyrics? What is it? What do you mean funky? What is it? Provocative is definitely a good word. Sometimes they can be sexually suggestive, and that's bad because, like, for example, that means kids love it, and who hates it? Parents, man. Adults hate it. Okay? It's sexually suggestive at times, And also, another problem they had with it is that in many instances, it challenges authority. And that scares parents even more. All right? Because if kids start learning about challenging authority, what might they do? Yeah, ask questions like, well, why is it this way? And if you've ever noticed, like a little child, like kids love to ask why. Why? Why do we do this? Why do we do that? And of course, inevitably, what does a parent say? No, because I said so. Okay? There's an authority, established authority, and then you are not the authority. And you're going to do it because I said so. And they're terrified that if they start questioning authority, that kids might rebel. And we don't want that. Right? You're going to be a good little kid and you're going to do exactly what your mom and dad tell you. Ooh. Are you guys good little kids that do what mom and dad tell you? No, you're rebels. All right? Yeah, we'll go with that. Now, let me play a couple things for you, okay? That scares adults, the established culture, but also another concern for our society, our generation, the advent of the television. Ooh, boy. TV. Right? TVs had actually been around for a while, right? But up until the 1950s, people couldn't afford them, right? That right there, by the way, is a TV from the late 50s, early 60s, and that one's like a dual radio television thing. You can see the knobs on it and the small screen. People crowd around the TV because they thought it was just the greatest thing ever, and you didn't have remote controls back then. You just had the little knobs you turned on there. And basically, there were only three channels you could get, the three major networks, NBC, ABC, and CBS. Okay? Televisions. They become popular, obviously, because they can afford them, but what is it that we show on TV that matters to people? What is it for? What is it? Let's start with that. News, dissemination of news. You not only get the news faster, but on top of that, what's different between a TV and a radio?
You can actually watch it.
You get the visual too, and human beings are naturally a little more visual than they are auditory. Okay, and that's going to be a big deal, especially when the Vietnam War happens, because people will see it, and they're going to see images, not just still images, but moving images of it, which is a huge change in American culture. So TV, the dissemination of news happens on the regular. You had it at noon and then 6 o'clock, and of course you had the late night news as well. What else is TV used for? Entertainment. Okay, original programs, movies, sports, entertainment. Right? And how do you think the original programs, the TV shows of the 1950s, how do you think that those were geared? Like, what was the content like? They have shows like what? Like True Detective, CSI? No, not at all. Because that stuff's way too gritty. What did they like? For example, what types of programs did they want people to watch?
Like, were they more geared towards kids?
Family friendly shows with positive messages. Okay? They wanted family friendly shows with positive messages. Uh, this might be reaching back for you all, but there's probably one show that you guys might have watched that was from the 1950s. Anybody ever seen Andy Griffith? The Andy Griffith Show is amazing. There's literally not one bad episode of the Andy Griffith Show, at least the black and white version. Okay? The Andy Griffith Show, and it was always good, wholesome entertainment. You have a small town sheriff who always catches the bad guy, and nobody ever gets seriously hurt, and there's always a good life lesson. It's a great show. All right? Yes. Twilight Zone, late 50s, early 60s. Yeah. All right. The 1950s had a lot of shows that were family friendly. Yes, I do. Will do. I love a good interruption. All right, Owen, see you later. Okay. So look, the TV of the time is used for an entertainment format, and it's always family friendly, and it reinforces the traditional values. Like there was one great show, look it up sometime. Leave It to Beaver. Okay. And the mom in the show She always cooked. She always did the cleaning, took care of the kids, and she did it while wearing high heels, lipstick, full makeup, and was dressed immaculately. There will be no ponytails. There will be no sweatpants on there. Women will do it all, and they'll do it all wearing heels, which is ridiculous to even assert, but it sets up this stereotype about what women should be, housewives and moms, and look pretty doing it, because that's what your husband deserves. Husbands sit around, read the newspapers, smoke their pipe, and they putter around in the yard.
Playing catch with your son.
Yes, it's a good time in America. Right? So TV is a fascinating facet of culture here for entertainment, but not just news, not just TV, but how do businesses find a way to capitalize on this? Advertising. Advertising becomes a huge medium for television. All right. And back then, you would have on TV, you would have a show that would be sponsored by just one product. Like one product would say, I want to sponsor this show. And so let's say that Marlboro Cigarettes would sponsor a show. And they'd be like, this show brought to you by Marlboro Cigarettes. Aw. Sports programming, obviously, the same way as part of entertainment, but they focused on things that were family friendly. Westerns were super popular at the time, and westerns, like who always wins? The good guy always wins. Good guys wear the white hats, bad guys wear the black hats. Aha. All right, by the way, has television changed since then? Oh, yeah. Another aspect of TV that's relevant for us, it was a family focal point. This is how families, one of the ways in which they started spending quality time together, that you would gather around the TV and watch together. You all still do that? Do families still do that? What shows do y'all watch together, Chloe? How about The Mandalorian? Of course not, right? My dad and I would watch that together. I got him watching it. He likes it. My mom even likes it. I know. She just likes Baby Yoda. Webb, do you guys watch any family shows? No, anybody? You don't have a TV show you watch? 8 o'clock on Thursdays. We used to watch the Cosby Show. As before Bill Cosby got creepy. What is it? Ah, yeah, The Walking Dead. Who doesn't love a good zombie show as a family? All right. TV served as a focal point. Now, what's a negative aspect of television? How does it basically hurt America? What is it? No, not liberal propaganda. How does TV hurt America? It makes us lazy. Absolutely. Americans become more sedentary. They sit around a lot. They sit in front of the screen. If they're sitting around in front of the screen, what are they not doing? They're not working or exercising or doing things other than simply just staring at a screen. And also, too, TV is very passive, okay? That you're just sitting there watching it, soaking it in. Whereas other activities, even reading, is active, where you have to be engaged. And what do you think happens to society when we start sitting in front of the TV more frequently? I don't want to say it, but what happens to the obesity rates in the country? They skyrocket. They're out of control. Uh, and that's a real problem in America. You talk about leading to increased healthcare costs, people who are unfit to enjoy life or to serve in the military or do a number of things. Instances of heart disease, early death. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? And that's a real issue, right? TV, I also, people used to be like, TV will rot your brain. And it's like, that's not entirely untrue. TV kind of does rot your brain a little bit, right? Now I got something else to show you fine people here too.